Welcome to the family, son.
So we're slowly working our way through the what-if scenarios I can come up with at the minute. We've done what if Luffy joined the Whitebeard Pirates. We've done what if Luffy joined the Red Hair Pirates. What if Luffy joined Kaido and Big Mom? I am heavily putting off at the minute because I cannot even come up with the slightest idea of how I'm going to, come up with a way to make that sound realistic. But I was kind of struggling, thinking, okay, well, if I can't do the Yonko, what else can I do? Like, what if Luffy joined the Straw Hat Pirates? That's not exactly going to be an interesting or exciting video, is it? And then I thought, hang on a minute, Luffy has a father, which came as a shock to him at least. So yeah, what if Luffy joined the Revolutionaries? Let's go. So Luffy's only encountered his father once, which was in the incident in Logtown where Dragon saved him from Smoker, but they were in the same area as each other one time before that, and I think this is the most realistic point in which Luffy would have a reason to go along with the Revolutionaries, train with the Revolutionaries. Join the Revolutionaries is a bit of an argument in one way or the other, but we're going to go along with it, and it was during the Grey Terminal fire. Now, if you need a recap of the Grey Terminal fire, the Blue Jam Pirates, who were like the evil pirate crew who was kind of like based on the Goa Kingdom on Dawn Island, they set up a fire to burn down the Grey Terminal on the orders of the nobles from Hightown in order to prepare for the arrival of the Celestial Dragon. The one who did this to Sabo. But anyway, the Blue Jam Pirates got like tricked, I guess you could say, and were intended to die in the fire with them, and Ace and Luffy were there alongside them, who were going to burn alive, basically. It was where Ace and Luffy had the fight with Blue Jam, Ace awakened his Conqueror's Heart, etc, etc. You can rewatch the arc if you want to see the events in that, but the key point is, Dragon and the Revolutionaries were in the area at the same time. In fact, it was Dragon who, after being told by Sabo what the plan was to burn down the Grey Terminal, who actually created a path for the population of Grey Terminal to escape, and took them along with him to the Revolutionaries. Now, Ace and Luffy were in that fire along with the rest of the population. Yes, they were occupied with fighting the Blue Jam Pirates, but maybe they did that a bit quicker, maybe they couldn't find a way to escape, maybe the Dardan and the bandits didn't arrive in time, and the only way for them to escape was to follow the one path of escape that's been created, and go on the ship with the Revolutionaries. That's the most realistic thing I can come up with for how this would happen. Ace and Luffy go onto the Revolutionary ship in order to get away to safety. Now, would they stay on it? For the purposes of this video, I'm obviously going to say yes, otherwise why have I mentioned this for the last 2.5 minutes? But yeah, it's a bit of an argument one way or the other. Would Ace and Luffy want to return to live with the bandits? I don't even think they were living with that bandits at the time, they were just living in the treehouse, but now maybe they've seen what's going on, maybe they still think the Outlook family, which is Sabo's family, still want to kill them, maybe they just think, well, what's the reason for us staying on Dawn Island? We don't have any family other than ourselves. There's a bunch of bandits who, for the most part, have been extremely abusive to them, despite the fact that they tried to save their lives once after 10 years of raising Ace, and they don't think they've got Sabo anymore, so they've lost him. What reason do they have to stay? So maybe they decide to go along with the Revolutionaries and just live their lives with them. Sabo would still be rescued as normal, obviously. It was completely independent of the presence of the Revolutionaries that the Celestial Dragon ended up shooting down his boat and, causing him memory loss. Interestingly, I don't think Sabo would have memory loss in this timeline. If he's picked up on the Revolutionary ship and, is doing, the medical procedures to save him and all that, he wakes up and he sees Ace and Luffy there, I think he's going to get, his memory back, or at least not lose it in some way or another. Because it was the fact that Ace died that he was like, oh, hang on a minute, Ace is my brother. And the memories came flooding back to him. Well, if he's seeing the two of them right in front of him, I think that's enough of a stimulus for him to regain his memories. Or you can just argue that he never lost them in the first place if you think that's easier. So yeah, there we go. We've got the ASL trio all joining the Revolutionaries, or at least sailing with them for a time being. How Garp would take this? Honestly, who knows? He was pretty terrible as far as grandfathers go. He showed up twice a year to beat the shit out of them. It's probably going to be a few months before he even arrives on Dawn Island to check up on them, and then he is only going to find out what happened if the Dardan family know what happened. And I know they were there in the actual timeline of events to saving them in the fire, but it could work out anyway. Honestly, they were pretty much scumbags, all of them. I don't care about the fact that she was heartbroken about Ace's death, or she tried to save him from Blue Jam. No, she left him and Luffy to fend for themselves at an extremely young age in a forest with extremely deadly animals. She didn't care if they died or not, and it was her abusive tendencies that cemented Ace's self-destructive nature essentially when he was young. She was a terrible excuse for a mother. So yeah, whether Garp knows, it doesn't even really matter, to be honest, because say it's just one of the bandits, Morgra or someone says, oh yeah, we saw a revolutionary ship in the area, we think Ace, Sabo and Luffy were taken away by them. Garp's going to be able to put two and two together and realise, okay, Dragon's probably had some hand in this, hang on, he can't do that. Oh wait, Luffy is his son, so yeah, he probably can. And then even if he thinks, no, I'm going to go take him back, he might not know where the headquarters are for the Revolutionary Armies. I mean, we all know they're in Baltigo, but that wasn't realised until Jesus Burgess found out, which is like 15 years ahead of the current timeline of where we are now. But yeah, also when the Revolutionary Army kind of like saved everyone, they did give everyone a choice. They could either stay and join the Revolutionary Army in order, follow the goals of the Revolutionary Army, be a part of them, train under them, join the fight against the nobility, the world government, etc., etc. Or they had the option to like go and live on a safe island that's been essentially protected by the Revolutionary Army, or at least being cleared by the Revolutionary Army, that it's not corrupt, this is a safe place where you can live out your lives. Now, I think Ace, in his he's got essentially a distrusting nature at this point in his life, would strongly advocate for that idea. It's just like, we were living on our own anyway, let's just go to a safe island, we can live there, we can grow up, and then we can do what we want with ourselves. Now, that's not a bad idea, but also I want to save an Ace, Sabo, Luffy video for a separate occasion, because I do have some ideas that I want to go with that, and essentially Ace, Sabo and Luffy growing up on their own on an island with no outward interference is the premise of that video. So we're going to skip that, even though I think Ace would find that realistic and say, Ace, Sabo and Luffy, they see that there's potential here with the Revolutionary Army to trade, go stronger, have a reason to stay with them, essentially, so they decide to do that. Now, Ace and Sabo and Luffy growing up at Baltigo, they would become very strong, like ridiculously strong. Like Ace and Luffy, when they left in the start of the timeline at 17, they were already very strong, at least by East Blue standards. They all burst through East Blue with relatively little difficulty. That was through growing up in a forest with no one to fight against other than each other, and no training other than Garp beating the shit out of them twice a year. Now that is, I don't really class that as training in my mind. Like, I don't think I'm going to learn karate if Jackie Chan comes over and starts beating the crap out of me every other year. Like, I don't think that's a very good training method. So under the guidance of Hack when they were younger, and then Dragon, Kuma, people like that, the trainees, the trainers in the Revolutionary Army, they're going to be very strong, stronger than they were in the real timeline. I think the weapons they use would also stay the same as well. Like Sabo, with memory loss, eventually came back to using a steel pipe as his main form of weapon. If he hasn't got memory loss in this timeline, why wouldn't they keep up with it? And Ace, at the same time, when he was a child, a steel pipe was his main form of weapon. And I'm not sure, I haven't read the novels yet, but I don't know if when he first started, before he got his devil fruit, he still used a steel pipe or not. I'd have to check that up, but yeah, I still think they'd keep the same weapon scheme, and Luffy just used as his fist. Ace wouldn't have his devil fruit, at least early on. Obviously, he didn't get that until he set out to be a pirate, and he ended up getting shipwrecked at Sixus with the Mastoos. Actually, now that I think about it, that would probably mean that throughout his career, he would actually use a weapon, because technically Ace probably wouldn't end up with a devil fruit, would he, if he's part of the Revolutionary Army, he's not in East Blue. And there is literally, I think this is a fact, but there is not a single person who doesn't have a devil fruit who fights with the bare hands other than Garp. And that's because he's, legendary at Haki. Like, Shanks hasn't got a devil fruit, he's extremely powerful, he uses a sword. Mihawk uses a sword. Everyone else who fights barehanded has a devil fruit, which kind of acts as a weapon, or an extension of themselves as a weapon. There's no other barehanded fighters who solely use Haki. So Ace would probably keep using the pipe as his main weapon even when he grows up. Or maybe he could switch it up, use a staff or something. We saw him use that at Impel Down when he was trying to escape, and he seemed like quite an expert with a staff. They're very similar weapons, so yeah, that sounds cool. I think Ace uses a staff as his main weapon. I think that's quite a cool idea. And also there's a point to make that even in this scenario, I don't think Dragon would tell Luffy that he's his father. Like, he was more than content to literally see him off in Logtown and not reveal his presence to him and the fact that he's his father. I don't think the fact that Luffy's part of the Revolutionary Army, even if it's as a child, is a good enough incentive for Dragon to just be like, hey, what's up? It's been a while. It's me, your father. No, we haven't seen each other for the last 8 years or however old Luffy was when the Great Terminal Fire happened. But yeah, it's me, surprise. He wasn't bothered about not revealing that to anyone. He seemed fairly lax about it when people found out, but he also didn't make any effort to reveal to anyone that it's just oh, hey, Straw Hat Luffy, that the rookie pirate who's making waves, he's burned down Ennie's lobby, he's fought at Marineford. Oh yeah, by the way, he's my son. It's just surprise everyone. I don't think he has a reason to reveal to Luffy that he's his father, so he doesn't. And yeah, then we kind of work through the childhood arc version of this video, I guess, because Ace, Sabo and Luffy training at the Revolutionary Army are going to become strong. Ace and Luffy, at the very least, will be very much stronger than during the actual series with the training with actual teachers, like I've mentioned before. And for some reference, I guess, on how strong they would be, Sabo's the only thing we can base it on, since he was said to be as strong as Ace pretty much. Ace was actually slightly stronger. I think it was in the 50 fights that they had, it was 26-24 in Ace's favour. But Sabo at the age of 22, I think, was essentially Admiral level. Like, we saw him fight on equal terms with Fujitora, and I know he might not be or have had many chances of winning, but I kind of class Admiral level as you're capable on fighting with even footing on an Admiral or a Yonko for whatever period of time with no risk to your own life. Like, when Rayleigh fought against Kizaru, he was not at any risk of dying, so I'd put him at Admiral level. At the same time, Sabo fought completely evenly with Fujitora for quite a prolonged period of time, stopping him from getting after Luffy, and he didn't seem to be in any risk of dying. So that's what I'd class as Admiral level. Marco fought evenly with Kizaru. He's got the advantage of he regenerates from any injury. It wasn't until Sea Stone cuffs were put on him that, he essentially lost the fight. But yeah, like I said, with the end of the childhood arc, we need to decide what each individual's going to do. Ace, Sabo and Luffy, what are they going to do? What are they going to set out to do? Sabo would 100%, I think, still join the Revolutionaries. It fits up with his personality and his goals extremely well. Like, Sabo was part of the nobility. He saw the corruption inherent in it. He saw how they treated other people as less than human. He was disgusted by it, and that was the reason he left his home. The idea of, or like the concept of an organisation which is trying to tear down that oppressive system would resonate with him extremely well, as it did in the actual timeline of the series, even though he had memory loss. Like, everything he wanted to achieve or everything he was disgusted by is part of the agenda for the Revolutionary Army to destroy or dismantle the concept of the world government itself. So based on that, Sabo definitely stays with the Revolutionary Army. Ace and Luffy are completely different. Luffy obviously wants to be the Pirate King. He's already made his promise to Shanks by this time, He's definitely going to become a pirate. There's no two ways about it. Once the childhood has been established for Luffy, he wants to become a Pirate King. He's going to sail on his own with the captain, as the captain of his own pirate crew. There's no two ways about that. Ace, I think, is very similar. His goal, I didn't check this up even though I should have, I think was kind of like to surpass his father, to become famous, like well known throughout all the seas. While being in the Revolutionary Army is possible to do that, like a fair number of people know that Sabo was the chief of staff, the number 2 of the Revolutionary Army. That was quite limited to like higher ups in the world government to know who he was off by heart. It wasn't like his, his name reverberated around the world like Whitebeard, Shanks, Big Mom, Blackbeard in the current timeline in Kaido. It wasn't the same reputation that a pirate has, and I think he's going to obviously be able to recognise that and think, no, if I want to surpass Roger, I need to be a pirate who surpasses him or become the Pirate King, something like that. So moving on, we know that the Ace and Luffy are going to become pirates, so how do they set out about that? I like the idea that I set up in the Shanks video where Luffy wants to set out from Dawn Island to start off his pirate career, kind of like a returning to the beginning. He set out, he was part of the Revolutionaries, this is the end of that chapter in his life, and this is the start of a new one where he sets out on his own, on his own boat, even if it was just like a little fishing boat in the actual series, and he becomes his own pirate, his own man, something along those lines. It's kind of like an innocent idea that I think fits quite well with Luffy, start from the beginning, something like that. Ace, I don't think has that kind of nostalgia or reason to go back to Dawn Island for anything like that. I don't think he'd set out from Baltigo, because if he sets out at 17, which I think they did agree to do, he's not strong enough for the New World. Even if he has been trained by the Revolutionary Army, he is not strong enough for the New World in any way, shape or form. So, he either sets out from East Blue, maybe he's not from Dawn Island, but, just he dropped me off in the East Blue, I'll make my way from there and do what I want to do. It's an adventure, I'll go anywhere, I'll see anything. Or he sets out from Paradise because he's probably strong enough at that time to survive Paradise. I prefer the idea, I think, that he sets out from East Blue, but there's also a bit of a split here. If he sets out from Paradise, one important distinction is he doesn't end up shipwrecked on Sixus, which is the island where he met Mastus. Sixus is where he found the Mera no Mi. If he doesn't set out from the East Blue, he doesn't get the Flame Fruit. And that is a massive difference here. So this is like the first split of the video. Does he set out from East Blue or does he set out from Paradise? Essentially, does he get the Mera no Mi or doesn't he? Now we're going to start with going through the timeline where Ace doesn't get the Devil Fruit. Whether or not this is, because he set out from East Blue and he just never ended up shipwrecked on Sixus, or if he set out from Paradise and never ended up anywhere near the Flame Fruit. And also the Mastus for that case, which is kind of a shame. So, actually, I prefer it the other way. Let's say he set out from East Blue and it's just a matter of, does he find the Flame Fruit or not? He ends up on Sixus, he finds the Mastus, he becomes friends with him, he decides to become the first mate of the Spade Pirate, and then let's just flip a coin into, does he find the Mera no Mi or not? That just works nicer for me because I quite like the Mastus. Now Ace, without a Devil Fruit, obviously he wouldn't be Fire Fist Ace. He'd have some other moniker of some description, which I'm not even going to attempt to come up with because it will show just how uncreative I actually am with coming up with names and stuff like that. He'd still blaze through paradise. He'd still be known as a super rookie for all the reasons previously stated. He's grown up through the Revolutionary Army. He is a monster in every sense of the word with how strong he is for his age. And he bursts into the new world. We'll keep it going as it was. He fights Jinbei, wins, gets accosted by the Whitebeard pirates, gets beat the shit out of by Whitebeard, gets captured, becomes part of the crew. There is a possibility, I know I said I haven't read the Ace novels, but I am aware of some of the events in it because I've talked to people who've read them. I think Thatch said the reason that the Whitebeard pirates were willing to let Ace stay alive and become part of the crew was because he was so weak that he wasn't essentially a threat to them, or something along those lines. In this timeline, he is stronger than he would have been originally, but I also don't think he's strong enough to have been a threat. So, Whitebeard still lets him live. He still has a reason to think, I like this guy, I want him to be part of my crew. He becomes part of the Whitebeard pirates, still without a devil fruit, all this reminds you. And that is quite important because that means in 3 years' time, Blackbeard kills Thatch, Blackbeard runs away, Ace goes after him. Ace doesn't have a devil fruit. He's not got accustomed to fighting with a devil fruit. He doesn't in any way, shape or form rely on a devil fruit. Blackbeard pointed that out as a big weakness of devil fruit users and one of the massive advantages of having the Yami Yami no Mi. Once he removes the power of a devil fruit users essentially become far weaker than they would originally be. Now I know it's only with physical contact that he can do stuff like that, and I know the Marineford no Mi seemed like quite an even matchup with the Yami Yami no Mi, at least originally. He used it to good effect against Blackbeard. His flame spears pierced through him quite efficiently when Blackbeard chopped him on the neck and nearly broke his neck. But this is an Ace who specialises in hand-to-hand combat. This is an Ace who is extremely good at physical attacks, both of which are Blackbeard's weakness. We saw at Marineford, he's extremely strong against devil fruit users who rely on the devil fruit. He thought that would give him an advantage against Whitebeard. Whitebeard completely beat the shit out of him just using his what's it called? Nagatini? Whatever the weapon Whitebeard has is called. He literally would have killed Blackbeard if he didn't get saved by, the rest of his crew, and the fact that Whitebeard was extremely weak, and the fact that Blackbeard is the only character in the entire series who I've ever seen use a gun to good effect. So yeah, considering Blackbeard's weak to everything Ace is strong at, there is a possibility that Ace wouldn't lose to Blackbeard in this situation. Yes, he's got, his gravity attacks and stuff like that, but like I say, Blackbeard's weakness is physical attacks. Ace's strength in this timeline would be physical attacks, hand-to-hand combat, everything Blackbeard's weak against. So maybe he wins. If Ace does have a devil fruit, however, I 100% think it would go the way it normally did. Ace loses to Blackbeard, gets captured, turned into the world government, set up for the Marineford arc essentially. He's going to get executed for being the son of Goldie Roger. Which brings us to the second split in this video timeline, because Marineford is a major event for a lot of characters. Does Marineford happen, yes or no? If Ace beats Blackbeard, then no, Marineford doesn't happen. Obviously, he doesn't get turned into the Marines, so Marineford doesn't happen. If he loses to Blackbeard, then Marineford does happen. So starting with Marineford doesn't happen, Ace didn't have a devil fruit, he didn't lose to Blackbeard, Marineford obviously doesn't happen. What happens then? What goes on? Well, Ace just returns to the Whitebeard pirates and, they just go about with the business. Sabo still plays his part in the Revolutionary Army doing what he does. The biggest change comes with Luffy. If there isn't a Marineford, then the Straw Hats are just going to enter the New World as they did. They get accosted by Kuma on Sabayori, which is an event in itself that I'm going to mention later. They get separated, but they all find their way back to Sabayori because Luffy doesn't have his sideline in Marineford. They get there, the whole 3 days agreement. They meet each other up. They get the ship coated. They head down to Fishman Island. Fishman Island events aren't going to be occurring at the same time because Holy Jones doesn't enact his plan for another 2 years. They enter the New World. The Straw Hats are far too weak to enter the New World at this point. This is essentially a what if there was no time skip, which is a Tekken 101 video, so I am never going to do a what if video on it. I would recommend you check it out though, because that basically summarises everything that I would agree is what would happen if there isn't a time skip. Basically, the Straw Hats are too weak to survive in the New World. They're going to get killed. Unless some other form of time skip occurs, then they're going to be too weak to survive in the New World. There is a slight possibility that they would be protected by Ace in this scenario. Like, Ace knows the Straw Hats have just entered the New World. He knows they're not going to be strong enough, so, you know, like, he gives a message to Whitebeard, or, you know, like, he asks Whitebeard, it's just like, hey, my little brother who I've mentioned to you, like, a bunch of times before, you know, Straw Hat Luffy, I'm sure you've heard about him in the newspapers. He's just arrived in the New World. He is weak as shit. Like, can we make sure he doesn't die, please? You know, like, get a message out to the Allied captains to look out for him, to, you know, maybe try and meet him and, like, direct him back to us, say we want to meet or something, because I need to have a talk with him. It's not the same as, like, I'm not doing if Luffy joined the Whitebeard Pirates. I've already done that video, and I really recommend you check it out. It's literally the best video on my channel. Hopefully this one's better, actually, but it's the best video on my channel right now. So he's not going to join the Whitebeard Pirates, but maybe Ace intends to, like, give him a wake-up call or something along those lines. Like, you know, like, ask the Straw Hats, okay, the Whitebeard Pirates want a meeting with you, Ace wants a meeting with you. So they go along, and then Ace literally breaks the news to him. You're way too weak for the New World. What the hell are you even doing in the New World? How did you even get to the New World? There's no way you should be able to get through here completely fine. You know, I'd tell you to go back to Paradise, but getting you back under the Red Line is a complete mess, and I don't even know how that works or where you need to go to get your ship cut or anything like that. Like, I don't think that's ever actually explained in the series, how you get back to Paradise. But anyway, yeah, Ace basically says just like, I'm not letting you go out on your own, you're way too weak. Obviously, Luffy's not going to have any of that. He's going to, like, you know, say, who the hell are you to say stuff like that to me? It's just like, I'm strong enough on my own, I fought my way through Paradise, you know, you can't tell me what to do because I'm the captain of my own ship. And Ace is like, alright, fine, tell you what then, if all of you together, all the Straw Hats together, fight me at once and can land a single hit on me, never mind even beating me, I'll admit I was wrong and you can go about on your own. You know, how's that for a deal? And obviously that's going to get Zoro and Sanji at the very least riled up, and they'd probably be very offended by that, and I think they'd agree to something along those terms. Even without his devil fruit, and even combining with the fact that Luffy probably learned some forms of Haki training with the Revolutionary Army, Ace is not going to be under any trouble fighting against all the Straw Hats at once. Like, assuming Luffy's the only one who knows Haki, and that's even if he managed to learn it at the Revolutionary Army, you know, the rest of the Straw Hats don't. You know, even if Luffy decided, okay, I'm going to train you about Haki, it was like a couple of months between him setting out and him arriving in Sabo, which is when he would have went into the New World in this timeline. He's not going to have taught them enough to know anything about it, and Ace was always way stronger than Luffy. Like, Luffy never ever, like, landed a hit on him when he was younger. So even if he's good with his gun powers now, it is. Even without his devil fruits, assuming he is, like, extremely strong at Haki, which is what he'd have to be in this timeline, he's got a 3-year advantage on them. He would destroy them. No questions about it. So we can assume under those circumstances that Ace beats the shit out of the Straw Hats. They think, oh, holy hell, this is a New World pirate. This is what we're up against. Maybe we are a bit weak. Maybe we jumped the gun here. And then, you know, they stay on the Whitebeard ship for a pseudo time skip there. Obviously, not just join the Whitebeard pirates, like I said in the last video, but stay with them essentially as an act of protection while they learn to become stronger. Luffy wouldn't require a 2-year time skip in this scenario to become as strong as he was, because he already has at least some basics of Haki down, in my head at least. The rest of them probably would need a bit longer, so let's assume it is 2 years and Luffy's just a lot stronger than he would have been if it was only 1 year, or a lot stronger than he was in the real timeline. From that, the timeline would just go pretty standardly. Like, it would just be post-time skip Straw Hats in the New World. Luffy's a bit stronger than he would have been otherwise because he was trained by the Revolutionary Army. They advance, they go through things, they got Punk Hazard, etc., stuff like that. Same with Dressrosa, no Colosseum battle because Ace isn't dead, so there's no Mera no meat on offer. Sabo obviously doesn't turn up because what reason does he have to? Like, I think he turned up there for the Mera no meat, perhaps. So yeah, I'll jump back to more post-time skip stuff after I do the second half of this split. Like, in case you've forgotten, this was just a split of if Marineford doesn't happen. Now we're going to go back and do what if Marineford does happen. So, you know, Ace had his devil fruit, he lost to Blackbeard, Marineford events occur. Now this would actually kind of start at Sabo, because if you think about it, Kuma accosts the Straw Hat when they're fighting Rayleigh and sends them all off to God knows where. I can't remember the names of all the where. Robin ends up with the Revolutionaries, Luffy ends up on Amazon Lily, etc. Luffy would recognise Kuma. Like, he would have grown up with Kuma as part of the Revolutionary Army. He'd know who he was, so he'd be probably confused at what's going on, but he wouldn't be as heartbroken as he was in the actual series because he'd understand Kuma's powers and he'd know, you know, he hasn't killed my crew or anything like that. He's sent them away. He's probably helping us here because he's getting us out of this situation, which is relatively bad. Like, I think Pacifistas was there, that Sentomaru guy was there, and Kizaru was there. That's instant death for the Straw Hat crew at the time. So Kuma saved their life, and Luffy had probably recognised that, so he wouldn't be as broken up about it. He wouldn't be like on the floor crying about losing his entire crew at the very least. But yeah, then at Amazon Lily, he learns about what's going on with Ace and Marineford, so he sets out to do Marineford. He goes through the events of Impel Down, so if you've watched my other What If videos, I've made a big deal out of this. If Luffy doesn't end up in Impel Down, Blackbeard dies there when he gets poisoned by Magellan. So in this timeline, Luffy goes to Impel Down, he causes the riots, etc., etc. Shiryu gets released, he encounters Blackbeard, fights Blackbeard, same way it goes down. He punches him once, he gets beat, Jinbei steps in. There's Impel Down goes how Impel Down goes, basically. And then they set off for Marineford with all the prisoners, Crocodile, all those guys. As far as Marineford goes, I think it would progress pretty much normally until Ace is about to be killed by Akainu. I'm going to allow Oda to take the wheel here and just say the events proceed similar to the What If video where Sabo got his memories back earlier. Sabo steps in and saves them. Obviously, he's like the chief of staff of the Revolutionary Army. He's going to have heard about Ace's execution. He's going to want to step in. He knows the Revolutionary Army isn't going to take part in anything like Marineford, so he's going to do it single-handedly. He's going to get there and save them, assuming he didn't get there from the start and, just like help Whitebeard. But I think Sabo there, Ace survives. He doesn't let Ace do something as stupid as turn back to fight Akainu single-handedly, despite the fact he's been captured, tortured, and imprisoned for like weeks on end. So he's obviously not fit enough to face an admiral. So yeah, Sabo, in an act of common sense, stops Ace from doing whatever extremely stupid thing Ace wants to do. That's actually quite important because when Whitebeard and Blackbeard, who are both obviously alive at this point, confront each other, Whitebeard was going to kill Blackbeard fairly comfortably, but he stopped at the last minute because he got shot by Blackbeard's pistol in an act of desperation before Blackbeard, and that was the straw that broke the camel's back for Whitebeard. He'd amassed so many injuries combined with his bad health that pistol shot is what broke him essentially. I don't think that would have happened in this timeline because Ace getting killed by Akainu caused Whitebeard to lose his mind and attack Akainu from behind. That scene where it's just the imposing figure of Whitebeard behind a completely shadowed Akainu. That was caused by Ace's death. That's what caused Whitebeard to literally get half of his face blown off. Okay, that was the most serious injury I think he encountered, apart from the one where Akainu blew that hole in his chest. I think without that injury where he essentially should have died instantly, losing half his brain and an eye. So without that injury, I don't think the Blackbeard bullet kills him, essentially. I think he manages to kill Blackbeard. I still think Whitebeard dies in this scenario because he amassed an extremely large amount of injuries combined with his ill health, combined with the fact that I think he arrived at Marineford with the intent that this was going to be his graveyard. So, he covers his children's retreat, they get out of there, Whitebeard falls, saving his family, saving his dream, which was to have a family, his treasure. And from that, everyone essentially except Whitebeard and Blackbeard survived the war at Marineford, cannon fodder notwithstanding. Luffy, in the course of that battle, I think would realise just how weak he is compared to most people. And I think in the course of that, he would realise that, okay, we're not ready to sail the seas of this calibre of person. We're not ready to sail the seas of someone like Whitebeard, who I've just watched do the things he did. I couldn't even handle Blackbeard on his own, and he was just a part of a Yonko crew for the longest time. So, he recognises his weakness, and he decides, okay, maybe we need to train. Essentially, time skip time. 3D2Y, all that. He gets his message out. He trains with Rayleigh because I don't think he'd go back to the Revolutionary Army for anything like that. I don't think the Revolutionary Army would be too willing to do stuff like that because it'd be Dragon who'd have to train him, and Dragon's got a lot on his plate. Rayleigh was a retired old gentleman who got sold to slavers for fun. He didn't have a lot going on, really, so he was more than happy to do it. And yeah, so Rayleigh trains Luffy, post-time skip Straw Hats, end up back there 2 years later. Moving on into post-time skip events, I know I mentioned this a bit earlier, but I decided to wait until a bit later to jump into it. The only post-time skip event that I feel like could link back to the Revolutionary Army, there's Sabo turning up in Dressrosa, which wouldn't necessarily happen this time because he turned up there for the Marineford, I think. So I might be wrong on that one. But also, it's not exactly going to be a big reveal. It's just oh, look, it's Luffy, my brother. Just yeah, we know. You know. It's you haven't seen him in a couple of years, so maybe she'll go to talk to him like that, but it's not exactly going to be a big reveal or anything. But the only other relevant thing that's happened with the Revolutionaries after that is with the Reverie, where Sabo and the rest of the commanders, I think it's Bello Betty, the big guy who can dig underground and the guy who turns into crows. I can't remember their names. They've been in like 2 chapters. They all attack the Mary Joa to rescue Kuma. You know, like Kuma had been caught, turned into a pacifist or whatever, and like had become a slave for the Celestial Dragons. They try to rescue him. Luffy would kind of have incentive to do that, because if you assume he grew up with Kuma present, it's like they'd have like a close bond with each other, and Luffy'd have a reason to want to save him. Luffy doesn't read newspapers, I don't think. Like, how they would get like the information that, oh, you know, Kuma has become a slave to the Celestial Dragons is beyond me. Like, that probably wouldn't even make newspapers, because like he was a warlord, you know, they didn't know he was being turned into a pacifist, and no one knew that other than those in the Marines and world government. The wouldn't have known that he'd got captured and turned into a slave. So Luffy wouldn't take any part in the attack on the Reverie, which we don't even know the outcome of. You know, like there's a big like reveal, like what's going on with Sabo, what's happened to Sabo. The Revolutionary Army looked very concerned about it. That's still not been revealed yet, as of me recording this at the very least. If you wanted to ask me who I thought would become Pirate King in this scenario, I mean Ace. I'm always gonna say Ace. Like, I'm not as confident as I used to be after reading the like most recent chapters. Like Luffy's had quite like the growth in power in like the last 50 or at least the last arc in Wano, because he's standing on pretty equal terms with the Yonko at the minute, so there's that. But I mean, like, if you can't tell from my channel name and profile picture, it's like I'm slightly biased towards Ace, but at the same time, it's like Ace is 3 years older than Luffy, so he's had 3 extra years to get stronger. And historically, at least through when they were a child, he'd always been stronger than Luffy, and they'd have had the same level of training with the Revolutionary Army. So, like, other circumstances notwithstanding, like the time skip training with Rayleigh, like Ace should be stronger than Luffy, and Ace would kind of have motivation to do it. Like, he said he never wanted to be Pirate King when he was about to get executed at Marineford. He said his goal was to make Whitebeard the king, and Sengoku even said, only you believe that. Whitebeard was grooming you to be the next Pirate King. And when he's watched Whitebeard die just to save him, maybe that acts as like a catalyst to make him want to have that dream, become the next Pirate King in honour of his, well, basically father. So yeah, like, however it wants to go, like, obviously I'm not going to claim that that's how it will go. Like I said, I am 100% biased in this scenario, but yeah, beyond that, it's quite hard to tell how things would go. Well, what can we say would happen? Like, in this scenario, Luffy, Ace, and Sabo obviously still works with them, but Luffy and Ace have a connection to the Revolutionary Army. If they're in trouble, they're probably going to help them, but the Revolutionary Army haven't really acted in the series as of yet. So how it goes from there, like, if the Revolutionary Army gets in trouble in the future, obviously Baltigo got like sacked in the main timeline, but there's no way they would have been able to prevent that. Then I imagine the Straw Hats and, well, the remnants of the Whitebeard pirates, if they're being led by Ace, would come to their aid. But yeah, what do you think would have happened? Like, I'm not going to ask who you think would have been the Pirate King was, because I feel like I'd get a lot of hate for saying Ace is going to be the Pirate King. Like, there's a reason Ace isn't the most like favourite character compared to Luffy, but yeah, that's just me. So how do you think this would have gone? Do you think this would have been an interesting storyline if things had gone this way? I think it's probably not as good as if they joined the Whitebeard one, just because joining the Revolutionary Army doesn't really impact them that much other than training. It's just where they'd leave and set off and how they'd become pirates beyond that, with the connections they've made in their time there. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching.